Only 3 types of Switch 2 game formats have been found. There's digital only, 64GB cartridges, or game key card format. There seems to be no in-between cartridge size like we had on the Switch 1. And 64GB cartridges are notably more expensive than the max 32GB ones used on the Switch 1.
Hello everyone, this is Magbo Gaming here, back at Angry Guy's channel, and today we're gonna be touching upon why is it that Nintendo only has the option of 64GB cartridges? Why is that? Well, I guess we're gonna find out more from this video that I found, and we'll all learn together. Because honestly, I don't see any logical sense why Nintendo doesn't allow options for 32 or 16 or 8GB cartridges, especially from indie titles that doesn't take too much space. So it's something that's like, what's going on here? Why is Nintendo doing this? Why is Nintendo not giving us much option except for game key cards or 64GB cartridge, which is pretty pricey compared to getting a PS5 or PS4 disc. But yeah, before we get started, be sure to check out Angry Guy on Rumble as well after you watch this video, of course, because yep, Angry has his videos up there with less censorship. He could say a lot more, and he's giving more priority on that platform rather than here. We're here too, but you get the idea. And check out his Angry Crypto Academy. Do not let anyone convince you that you will own nothing and be happy, because crypto is the proof that you can still own digital assets today, and you can find out which cryptos exactly you should be investing and looking into, so you could possibly make amazing gains in the future. And also check out my YouTube channel at Magbo Gaming, where I post videos on my game collection, gaming topics, doing some game hunts. It's been a little bit over a week since I posted a video, but I post shorts pretty much weekly, so hope you're patient with me there. But if you guys want to check out my channel and all the videos I have up there up to now, I hope that you enjoy. You can check it out. Anyways, let's get on with this commentary, shall we? The commentary that Nintendo has a serious problem. The person who made this, yeah, he's very, very underrated. Dastardly John, and has 1K view, not bad for 1K view. I may check out his Discord later. Anyways, this guy right here, Dastardly John, has made this video. Let's see what he says about it.
Most people absolutely love physical games, especially fans of Nintendo. The idea of having a dope collection of some of your favorite games is one of the best feelings that you can have as a gamer. However, there is something that Nintendo chose to do with the Switch 2 that, like a lot of their decisions, doesn't make any sense at all. The only options right now that developers have access to in terms of storing their games on cartridges are a 64GB card or a game key card. And the 64GB card, for one, is way too much for a game that's, say, only 4 gigs. Why would you need something that big?
Exactly. Why not have a 8GB cartridge so you can fit the 4GB game on it? I mean, come on. You're gonna be spending like $16 for a 64GB cartridge when you're gonna be selling an indie game like with that small size for like, I don't know, $10, $20, $30, you know, with the cartridge. So they're not gonna see much profit afterwards. So that's why they will probably choose the game key card, because it's only like 50 cents for a game key card. Unfortunately, Nintendo is enabling this, and you know, this has got to be addressed. Unfortunately, they're here to stay, but I'm still gonna stay firm that we need to vote with our wallets. See if Nintendo can change their minds on it later down the road.
On top of that, it also costs $16. This can cut drastically into a company's profit margins, and if they don't get as many sales as they were anticipating, can actually make them lose money, which is why almost everybody is going with the game key card. Aside from games like Cyberpunk, which, wouldn't you guess it, sold the best out of the third-party lineup, the game key cards cost no more than $1 to produce, and the devs can actually get their games on store shelves. In games like Puyo Puyo Tetris 2, it is a 4GB game. It also costs $40. So, a game keycard...
Yeah, imagine a 4GB game costing $40 in today's day and age. Yeah, it's crazy, right? Anyways, yeah. Like, of course they're gonna choose the game keycard.
Is what they went with. And a huge amount of games on Switch 2 have that problem. Now, part of the problem here is that people are boycotting the existence of these game keycards. And thus, people are choosing not to buy them at all. This is affecting the game devs because they're losing money on unsold games, and us, since we can't play their games, period, without having a fake collection. And I personally hate the idea of not having the physical game in my hand. It's just a string of numbers that...
And even if you download the game on a game key card, instead of it being transferred to the game key card itself, because it doesn't have any storage, it's just a digital game card and stuff, it goes to your console. And you know, as I said last time, they're gonna fill up in storage real quick, and then you'll have to get a express SD card. So that's a lot more money out of your pocket there.
Doesn't really do anything other than triggers a download, and that's not very fun. I will say there is a factor of we just need to suck it up and buy the game keycards. But I also get where people are coming from, and I don't want to buy a game keycard either. So it all really comes back to Nintendo. Why do we have this problem in the first place? Because Nintendo decided to do a 64 gig cart, and that's it. I don't really get this, as Nintendo did all sorts of different sizes for Switch 1, from say 5 to 64.
Yeah, exactly. So Nintendo was willing to have options for Switch games of 4, 8, 16, 32 gigabyte storage, and 64 gigabyte storage, of course. They have all those options on Switch 1, but yet all of a sudden in Switch 2, they only have 64 gigabytes.
We now have a big clue about how games might release on the Switch 2. Thanks to leaks from Arc System Works Publishing Company, only 3 types of Switch 2 game formats have been found. There's digital only, 64GB cartridges, or game key card format. There seems to be no in-between cartridge size like we had on the Switch 1. And 64GB cartridges are notably more expensive than the max 32GB ones used on the Switch 1. That means if their game is under 64GB, putting it on a physical cartridge might be a waste of money for publishers. So most third-party games might go the game key card route instead. But what if a company offered a full game on a physical cartridge but for a bit more money? Would you pay extra for a real physical copy? Let me know and follow for more.
So, like, why Nintendo left that out, I'm not sure. This only leads to know that, yeah, Switch 1 games are here to stay for a good while. If an indie developer wants to make games on a physical cartridge, well, logically they're gonna go with Switch 1 and not Switch 2. And that's why Switch 1 is gonna be extremely alive still these days, because a lot of these indie developers may not want to have a game key card, especially limited run. Limited run's not gonna stand for game key cards because they're all about physical ownership, having everything on the cartridge or on the disc, so you could play it all offline without any internet dependency and stuff like that. Of course, limited run is not gonna have Switch 2 stuff unless they are very confident enough that their games are big enough to fit a 64GB cartridge and it's going to sell extremely well. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess. Or if the game's too powerful for Switch 1 or something, which won't happen anytime soon, to be honest. But, you know, I'm just saying, like, if you're going to make limited run, get into these game key card business, well, that ain't going to happen because it's going to go against what they stand for, literally. So, you know, the day that limited run games start making games for game key card in the future, they're no longer limited run, or they're no longer preserving games like they claim to be always. That's why stop killing games is a thing. That's why these things are around. So if buying is not ownership, then piracy is not illegal, right? Yeah, that's the thing. So this is a problem that needs to be addressed ASAP. Yes, so yeah, guys, keep making Switch 1 games at full power. I will continue to buy your Switch 1 games, whatever that's good in my collection, because, you know, Switch 2 ain't giving you much options right now, so let's continue going crazy with Switch 1 games. There's still a lot more Switch 1 games coming out this year, and possibly even next year, than Switch 2 games. That's crazy, because once a console comes out, the successor comes out, there's supposed to be a lot more games coming out for the successor than the predecessor. But the exact opposite is happening. That's kind of like what's happened to PS4 and PS5. In the first couple of years, there were still more PS4 games coming out than PS5. Pretty crazy, but, you know, I can understand why. I am always happy about that. Because a lot of these new consoles are super duper king expensive, and I can't even buy them. And I'm glad that I still own the console where I could play the newer indie titles and everything. Like indie games, I don't think there's going to be any indie games that's only available for consoles I do not own. Oh, tell me if there's an indie game right now that is only available on PS5 and only available on Switch 2. Tell me. Let me know in the comments. I would like to know. Because I don't think there's much whatsoever. Yeah. And basically what I'm saying is that I'm glad as long as indie titles continues to come on Nintendo Switch 1 and on Steam Deck or on Steam or PC, even PS4 sometimes too, I'm always going to have a way to buy these indie games and play it without having to invest on a super expensive console that's $500+ like a PS5 or a Nintendo Switch 2.
Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. Make huge profits and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now.
See the factor of pricing playing a role? If the prices on all the cartridges are essentially the same, then I don't know what the issue there is, other than tech just not being up to speed. They set everybody up for basically failure from the start. We can't actually enjoy physical games, developers lose money, and Nintendo loses out on building lasting relationships with companies that could increase sales for them. It's a lose-lose-lose situation for everybody. Developers are, at this moment, scrambling in their offices trying to figure out what to do because people are boycotting their games and they're losing money. They're angry at Nintendo, and I would be too. I'm not angry right now, but say they release Final Fantasy.
This is why I would advise third-party companies to not go for Switch 2. Do not support the Switch 2. Just continue making games for Switch 1, for the Steam Deck, and PC, and heck, even PS4, I guess, too. And of course, there's a bunch of indie games on PS5, so yeah. Because PS5 has everything on the disc as well. So that's one thing PS5 has that Switch 2 third-party does not have. So Nintendo Switch 2 game key cards need to step it up. They need to start offering more options and let the developers afterwards choose if they want a game key card or not. Because I'm pretty sure most third-party developers that cares about physical preservation, they're gonna choose one of those gigabyte options, not necessarily a 64 gigabytes.
7 as a game key card, all of a sudden it's affecting me and I'm gonna be mad. It's as simple as that. And thus, Nintendo?
Oh yeah, and forgot to mention too, yep, if Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate becomes a game key card, yeah, you better get your micro SD express card ready because it's gonna take up most of the space in your hard drive, on the internal hard drive of the Switch 2.
Kind of has a Wii U situation again. It's simply masked by huge sales on the first party side of things. I'm predicting that Nintendo will have less third party support for the start of the next generation. Unless I can turn this around. That's simply how it's going to work. These game companies are suffering because Nintendo is locking them behind 64 gig carts. Their sales are the lowest of the lows, far lower than even the minimum of what their predicted sales would be, causing them to lose tons of money. Nintendo has to take action quickly, or they risk becoming buried in a pile of game key carts that no one wants to buy. The game companies are...
Yeah, so basically, a lot of people are aware of game key card. You could price it as cheap as you want, even for 1 cent. But if most of those companies want to have their content on the cartridge because they care about game preservation in the future, hopefully more and more developers starts realizing this, and then they wake up and I'm like, okay, you better hit it where it hurts Nintendo is their bottom line, their pockets. Stop supporting these game key cards. And then maybe Nintendo, instead of them saying, oh, they're here to stay, and they will say, okay, I guess we could consider making more options for storage capacity on each of those cartridges, because I think it's a fair market for everyone and they could choose. I don't think Nintendo's going to say that anytime soon, but I'm just saying that hopefully we can make it to the point where they can say that.
suffering, and that just sucks. They're losing money because Nintendo made a choice that sucks for everybody. And thus, Nintendo needs to make a decision. I say release more sizes of carts. Sure, they might be mad expensive right now, but at least then you'll have people actually buying games, and the prices will eventually go down as tech gets more advanced, rather than making us suffer the entire console generation. There's also another option for the games that are larger: raise the price by $10. Yakuza 0 is $50 and it's a game key cart. Instead, raise the price to $60 and just do a physical release. I bet 70% more people would actually buy the physical copy. Sure, not everyone would.
Yeah, definitely, like, if you're in a collector's market and stuff, if you're trying to get as much sales as possible from having the thing on the disc or on the cartridge, yeah, just make the things available for a little bit more on the cartridge, and collectors will pay more to get it. They would rather pay a little bit more to have ownership over a game than to pay less and not have any ownership whatsoever, or just have a license to play it and stuff. That's what collectors care about. Most of them, they care about gaming preservation. They care about owning the game. They care about, like, if the lights go out or if the internet goes kaput for a while because of some disaster happens. If a hurricane passes by Puerto Rico, for example, and we have no internet for months, we'll still have these games readily available to be able to be played as long as we have a battery source and we have a power plant and stuff like that. We can still play the game offline. You get the idea.
Coding. Also, I know that there's indies out there that did this for Switch 1. Stardew comes to mind immediately, as it raised the price of its physical on Switch 1 to $35, and no one batted an eye. It's a $15 game. But what do you all think of this situation?
Yeah, that's a good example as well. And, the video just ended now, more or less. So, yeah, I remember Celeste, right? Celeste was only $10 that I bought digitally. But I was willing to pay $30 to $35 so I could get the full physical version with the manual, with the cover art, with the inserts, with the cartridge, that everything is on the cartridge, and I could play it offline anytime I want, and if I want to sell it, I could. It gives you more control over the things that you buy. So yeah, while it's a much cheaper option to buy it digital, yeah, I would pay more to have it physical. I will certainly pay a little bit more to have it physical, to have ownership. Because that ownership can go a long way in the future when more people want to get physical games and they're not enough in the market. The demand's going to rise up. And it's just like crypto, by the way. Yep, crypto is also like you have the ownership. A lot of people want it. There's a finite amount of it compared to digital of stuff that is leased, that is not owned. And owning stuff can increase your assets over time, especially if they have value. It could increase your net worth. It could increase your status online and throughout the world. It could give you something that you represent. Ownership is something that's empowering to the consumer, that they have control over what they have. Instead of leasing them where you have no control and you don't own anything, you don't get no money out of it. Instead that they take a subscription every single month. So definitely that's why people support physical media. And there is a huge movement about that. And I'm glad that there's a lot of movements like that, because I'm glad that not a lot of people are brain dead. That there's a lot of people out there that they're not brain dead and they realize what's really going on. And they want to put a stop to, an old digital future. That's why crypto is a thing. And yeah, guys, that's all I will have to say about this. Because game key cards, if they continue to stay, if we vote with our wallets, maybe they'll change their path. But if we support the game key cards just for convenience, if you buy convenience, you will, for security, you will eventually own none of them. And you will not have security. You will not have protection. You will not have the freedom or anything like that. It's good that we value what we own, because we'll have complete ownership. We'll have complete responsibility. And, we'll have more control over our lives in general. It's not just about video games, it's about life in general as well. So I hope that this commentary helped you guys out, understanding what's the implication behind these type of issues that Nintendo is doing and all the other companies are doing with the old digital future. Be sure to check out Angry Guy on Rumble once again, so you could check out any of his videos without any censorship. And he has more focus on there than over here on YouTube. He gives more priority over there. And check out his Angry Crypto Academy, like I said earlier, and like I said recently, because you could learn to own digital assets that could increase in value over time. If you have the patience, if you know that this is ownership is what you really strive for, yeah, take ownership of that. And yeah, check out my channel at Magbo Gaming in the description below. So you can check out my game collecting video, me searching for games that I'm looking for my collection. Maybe that's a fun one for you guys to get into. It can inspire you to search for video games as well. And also any video game related topics that I could talk about. I would do it there. Most of them are here right now because it's been helping the channel a lot as a whole, but I do my own stuff there from time to time, of course. So also check out my channel as well. Anyway, that's all I have to say, and I'll see you all in the next one. Magbo out. Peace.